What's up, Beals Buddies? I am Steve. I'm here with more Let's Make Comics. I have prepared pretty much nothing for this episode, mostly because I'm just going to kind of show you my art supplies. I had an experimental last few years, so I've been using lots of different gouaches and fluid acrylic paints and all kinds of crazy stuff. So I'll show you the Bristol boards and the Winsor Newton Series 7, and I'll show you some of the other stuff I've been using. But just gonna kind of dive into a bunch of tools, and I figure there's not a whole lot of preparation I can do, so I'm just gonna kind of wing this one. So you can't make comics without comic supplies. You've got your traditional 11 by 17 Bristol board. You can buy that at any art store or online. More common, you'll find 14 by 17. So I've used 14 by 17 and trimmed off, 3 inches. You got your T-square, your pencils, your India ink or whatever kind of ink you're using. I mean, there's not a whole lot you need to make comics, but this is just kind of a fun art video, so bear with me and I'll show you the stuff I've been using. Okay, so let's get straight off the bat here. We'll go into our comic book supplies. This right here, Bristol board. It is nice texture. You can get it like pre-printed with these light blue lines that show you common panel divides, so you can split it into thirds or quarters or down the half. If you're doing like comic pages and stuff. When I'm doing a comic page, I usually leave, I think I do like a ½ inch on each side and a full inch on the top and bottom as just kind of a border, because you want to have room for, when it's printing and when it's scanning and stuff, you want to have a little bit of room for bleed, it's called, which kind of like goes off the page and may or may not show up in the final print. Let's see here, let's take a look at what pencils I have. Let's see here, this is my crazy thing full of stuff, I call it. I don't actually call it that. I have these Micron markers. A lot of people use Micron because it's archival. It doesn't fade. A lot of regular ink over time will start to turn brownish and it'll get fuzzy and stuff. These will pretty much just look like the way they look forever. Let's see here. Now the pencils I use, hold that thought. Here's a couple. I use these turquoise pencils. I have a 4B and a 3B. It's not a real great difference here, but I'll show you. I'll demonstrate some different ones. Artist pencils differentiate from hardness to softness. So your standard yellow school pencil, I think it's it's an HB or a 2B or something. The harder it gets, so when you get to a 3H, a 4H, you'll get very crisp, clean lines, but they become very light. So a lot of times when I'm sketching something out and I'm doing very rough images, I'll use like a 4 or 5H and it's super light. And then when you get into the B's, they become softer. This one's a 4B. It's got a very, that's not going to go in focus, is it? It's got a very soft, kind of thicker look, but it gets a lot darker too. And those are more likely to smudge. So when you're drawing, you're going to get a lot of pencil all over your hand and stuff with those soft, darker pencils. This right here is a Winsor Newton Series 7 brush. It's like the go-to brush for a comic book artist. Usually you'll get, I think, a 3 or a 4. Right now, it looks kind of floofy, we'll say. But when you get it wet, this is not a great brush, but it'll come to a point. And the cool thing about a Series 7 is it kind of has this shape, this kind of thick bottom and this thin top that comes to a point. When you're just using the little top point, you can make these very thin lines. And when you press on it, you get a lot more of that badunk-a-dunk of the brush. You get a real thick line to it. So you can get that thin to thick line that a lot of comic book inkers look for. Now, they've been making these guys better and better. This is a Pentel pocket brush. So it's basically it's like a Winsor Newton. It's like that kind of brush thing where you can go very thin to very thick, and you trade out little ink cartridges in the pen. So you have that like to go. You don't have to dip it in the ink. But if you're using your Winsor 7, this is what I use. It's a what's it called? Bombay. It's Dr. P.H. Martin's Bombay Black India ink. I like this one because it's a very dark black line. When I was doing Emo Boy, I had Sophie Campbell did a pinup for me, and she gave me the original art, and it's one of my prized possessions. It's so beautiful, and the ink on it is so incredibly black. And I asked what it was that she used to get that black ink, and she told me Sumi ink. S-U-M-I, and I have not tried it yet, but it's on my to-do list because it's really cool looking. Now let's say you make a mistake. What are you going to do? You got this guy right here. This is a kneaded eraser. You can stretch it and rip it apart. If it's new, it stretches. If it's old like this one, it rips apart. But that's how you clean it. So first off, you can mold it into shapes. Make like a little point there if you need to. You can make it big so you can cover lots of the paper. It doesn't leave little dusty bits like a normal eraser would. It's very clean, so it just picks up that pencil and doesn't make any mess. When it's full of pencil lead, you rip it up and it cleans itself. So, kneaded eraser. That's good for erasing. I don't know. Also, I was talking about 14 by 17. These Borden and Riley Paris paper for pens, it's a little bit thinner than Bristol board, but it's a very smooth, bright paper. It takes ink perfectly. It's like a thin kind of convenient version of Bristol board. It's not as thick and bulky as Bristol board is. So I use a lot of this stuff. This is pretty good too. It's maybe not the best for if you're going to use a lot of watercolor or something, because it is a little bit thinner than Bristol board is, so it's not going to take quite as much, but great for inking. Oh, let's see. What should we talk about next? Watercolors. Painting. Here, so these are my new watercolors that I got maybe a year ago. It's a professional Winsor Newton series. Comes with all these different colors here. You got your trays for mixing stuff, just to add some water and pick it up. I like the cakes, the pans, whatever you want to call them, as opposed to the tubes, although I do use the tubes as well. They're just so much easier. I'll use my Series 7, but I'll use cheap brushes. I mean, I've gotten into the professional watercolors, but I haven't really moved into professional brushes because that's an expensive hobby. This guy, toothbrush. And I'm not for brushing my teeth. Whenever I go to the dentist and they give me one of these, I'm like, yes, new toothbrush. I use it for splattering. So you just kind of take your ink, drop a few things on there. This is messy, so you want to make sure you have newspaper and stuff stretched out, but get some good ink on there and you just flicker it. Just kind of do this right here, and it just flickers the paint, splatters all over. It's great for shading and texture. Got masking fluid. So this is especially for watercolors. So let's say you have a character standing against a starry night or whatever. So you'd put the masking fluid over the character and it dries, and then you paint the entire background, you splash your water, you do all the things, and then you peel off, once it's all dry, you peel off the masking fluid, and then you can go in and paint the foreground. It hasn't been touched with all the stuff, so that way you're not kind of finessing all around the corners. You can just kind of go wide with it. And so I watched Scott Fisher on Instagram. He was doing these Inktober pieces on like old ledger art, and he was painting with this like watercolor kind of substance, but it was opaque, so you could paint, you know, color on top of color, and you could use white. And what is that stuff? It's FW, acrylic ink. So it's like acrylic paint, but it's the consistency of ink. So it's very wet, watery, but it's opaque. I'll show you how some of this stuff works. Here we go, FW, here's blue. So I've been using these, and I've been using PH Martin. They also make, it's like a watercolor, but it's really, really bright, high pigmented watercolor. It's very intense, these things. The one problem I have with those is if you try to use any kind of white, like the FW white ink over it, it just absorbs all that color. So if I use a bright orange fluorescent paint, it looks beautiful, but when I try to put white over it, let's say I'm making little stars on top of it, it just absorbs all the orange. It will not stay white. So that's the one problem with that stuff, but otherwise it looks beautiful. Here's some fluid acrylics. I've been using these more and more lately. The cool thing about these are, as you can see here, that right there is its transparency. So you can see that the black lines kind of go right through it. It's very watercolor-esque in that if I have an inked page and I use these fluid acrylics, similar to the FW inks, except they're actually more transparent. So here you've got ink that you can't see through, it's opaque, and then you've got acrylic that you can see through. Sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't. And so I will use these. Often I'll just take like a paper towel. I won't even use a brush. I'll pour some of this on like I don't have one readily available, but on a palette, a disposable palette. I'll go ahead and I'll get the paper towel and I'll just kind of smear it around just to play with color and put down a whole bunch of color. I've been very messy lately with my art, so these are pretty cool too. All right, back to the couch. Alright, so just a quick little update on what's going on all things Steve. We've got sketchbook dissections going on over on Instagram. I'm going to bring that over to YouTube too. Just look at more sketchbooks. We're going to look at my sketchbooks, look at Chan's sketchbooks. Once Upon a Midnight Gaming, it's going to be twice a month up until I think May. Then we're going to scale back to once a week. Once Upon a Midnight Gaming is going twice every week on Mondays and Fridays. We're going to scale that back to just Fridays, I think, starting in May. For Let's Make Comics, we've got this video. We've got a big happy face post-mortem video. So the post-mortem videos, I'm going to do a series of these. Kind of almost documentary-like, longer form videos, really dissecting different projects I've done. So we have Emo Boy, Happy Face, Wintertown, Bright Lights, Dark Nights, First Offerings, the Kickstarter for Machina Corp. So we'll just kind of look at full scope. You know, this is Let's Make Comics, so I'm just going to talk about where the concepts came from, how I made them, the whole backstory, the release, you know, the whole story, the whole life that goes into making a book or a comic. And then kind of examine the process removed from it. You know, what could I have done better? What worked really well? You know, so hopefully anybody that's looking to create books or comics or make anything can get something out of that. So I'm really excited about those. The first one will be Happy Face coming up this month. After that, I'm going to do a series of smaller conversations with Chan. We're going to talk about some stuff that she can speak more to that I can't. She's got more knowledge in conventions and selling prints and her Patreon stuff, networking, social media. There's a lot of stuff that she's good at and has done that I haven't done or that I'm not as knowledgeable about, I guess. So gonna do a series of conversations with Chan through April. And part of this is because I want to finally focus on this webcomic that I've been talking about forever. So this is the year that I'm going to be launching Have Heart, which is my horror webcomic. And I don't want to spill too much about it. I don't want to talk about it too much at this point because it's still kind of being developed. I'm figuring out how I want it to look. What exactly is the story going to be? I think I want to leave it kind of open-ended so I can explore and find the story as I'm going, which I think is something kind of interesting about the webcomic medium. So I'm going to talk so much more about that in the future, but I've spent so much energy this year working on Let's Make Comics, on Once Upon a Midnight Gaming, on sketchbook dissections, trying to get this YouTube thing rolling. And I mean, like, you know, it hasn't exploded or anything, but I feel like we've got it rolling. We're gonna kind of fine tune what the schedule is gonna be. And I think I can ease back enough that I can actually start focusing on this comic, which is, you know, primarily what I want to do this year. My goal is to launch it in April still. I know we're cutting it close. I mean, we're partway through March already. By the time I finish up this happy face video and start editing all this stuff for April, it's going to be like there. And I mean, am I going to have the website, the logo, the pages and all that stuff? I don't know. I'm trying. I really want to get this going because that's important to me, and I'm really excited to share that with you. But I just wanted to give you guys an update. That's kind of what's coming up over the next couple months. YouTube's still going strong. Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. Please follow, comment. Phone's ringing. Jersey City, New Jersey. I don't know anybody in New Jersey. I'm gonna say no to that one. But yeah, we could use your support. We are trying so hard to grow. It's not easy in these early months here. Gonna do more promotion once we have some great videos up. There's some really funny gaming videos coming up. This happy face video I'm super excited about. And hopefully you guys find something here today with this tools of the trade. I don't know. I know when I was a teenager and I was getting into comics, I was fascinated by what materials comic book artists use. I remember there was this documentary on Image Comics, and I saw Rob Liefeld inking something with his brush, and I was like, oh my god, that's the coolest thing. And there's this guy, Brian Romero, that worked at this comic book store that I grew up next to, and he was a comic book artist. He's very talented, and he was pitching stuff to Marvel, and I would just fanboy, and he'd show me his sketchbooks and all these brushes and stuff, and I just found that stuff fascinating. So hopefully you do too. Hopefully you get something out of this. If so, like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell. It really does help all these algorithms and show YouTube that this is a page that people are interested in, and it can help get the videos recommended to other people, and you know, that's how growth happens. So we really appreciate it. This is my Alf impression. Hey Willie! No, this is my Willie impression. Alf. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. That was a lot of fun. Next week is the big happy face video, unless somehow I fail to do it or it becomes so big that I don't get it done, in which case patience is your friend and it'll be worth it. Unless it sucks and I don't do it at all, in which case shame on me. This has been Let's Make Comics. Like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell. Be a responsible YouTube patron. Our lives depend on it. And stay spooky, my friends.